Rachel, I also understand that you're getting word of a surprising guest tonight. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I will tell you, many members of Congress here on Capitol Hill probably are not expecting this one. I just learned that embattled former Congressman George Santos, who was expelled from the House months ago, plans to attend the State of the Union address tonight. Now, you may be asking, how is this even possible? Well, former members of Congress do have privileges to come on the House floor, and former Congressman Santos, still has those privileges, even though he was expelled. So he does plan to be inside that chamber tonight, along many of his former colleagues who, by the way, voted him out of the House, expelled him, saying that he brought shame to the House representatives. Lindsay.
Guess who's coming to dinner?
George Santos was there as well last night, and he has announced his bid to return to Congress. The former GOP representative who was expelled from the House last year made the announcement last night. Santos wrote on social media that he would be returning to challenge GOP Representative Nick Lalota. He argued that New York has not had a real conservative represent them since he left office. That tweet was posted during President Biden's State of the Union address. And once again, he was in the chamber for that address last night.
It's not a lie if you believe it.
I'm George Santos, and I approve this message.
George, you're doing so well in your private sector job. Why are you going to go to Congress? I say, you know why? Because I've learned so much in my private sector job. I was able to grow as an individual.
Questions about whether his mother was inside the World Trade Center during 9/11. Claims he stole thousands of dollars meant for a veteran's dying service dog.
Lying about getting a degree from Baruch College, claimed to have worked for Citigroup and Goldman Sachs.
That he survived an assassination attempt.
I manage a $1.5 billion fund, right?
Fabricated his ties to the Holocaust.
My heritage is Jewish. I've always identified as Jewish. I was raised a practicing Catholic. I'm Jewish. Remember, I was raised Catholic.
Republicans are eager to take back control of the House, as a number of newcomers are throwing their hat in the ring to make that happen. One of those candidates is George Santos, who is seeking to represent constituents in New York's 3rd District. He joins us now to discuss his campaign. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So you are a first-generation American after your parents immigrated from Brazil, seeking the American dream. Tell us more about your story and how that inspired you to run for Congress.
Absolutely. So, as I say often, I am the American dream. My parents left a very, very troubled nation, which was Brazil, legally, as I say often also, in order to attain better life, and had their kids here, were married happily for 18 years. Unfortunately, they did divorce and my mother did pass. But besides that, I believe that through coming to America, seeking the American dream, I was able to become the American dream and living proof that it's still available out there for anybody who's willing to work hard. And when I see that in Congress we have this socialist takeover attempt, and that's going to kill the American dream, that really makes it hard for me to sit by idly and not do anything. A lot of people might ask, George, you're doing so well in your private sector job. Why are you going to go to Congress? I say, you know why? Because I've learned so much in my private sector job. I was able to grow as an individual and professionally, and I want to take all that knowledge and apply it to my public sector job once I become congressman, so I can better the lives of Americans.
Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi says despite his congressional race in New York's 3rd District still being too close to call, where he trails by more than 4,000 votes, the seasoned politician sees a victory on the horizon, banking on 90,000 absentee ballots that have yet to be counted.
Based upon the percentage of Democrats, the percentage of Republicans, the history of doing this kind of stuff, that I'm going to win by over 20,000 votes.
A bulk of those absentee ballots sent in by registered Democrats who opted to stay home due to the pandemic. An apparent trend that the congressman says happened across the country, where in-person votes leaned Republican and mail-in votes leaned Democrat.
Biden will win my district in Nassau County, and I will win my district in Nassau County.
Last night alone, we swung a very large percentage of Democrats to vote for me.
The congressman's Republican challenger, George Santos, a newcomer to the political scene, is singing a very different tune.
He not only overlooked me, he looked down on me. He refused to debate me.
The 32-year-old Queens native who works in finance said the congressman took an arrogant approach to the race and credits his current lead in the vote to an underestimated campaign which connected with voters.
2 weeks after Election Day, Democrat Tom Suozzi has won re-election representing New York's 3rd congressional district. Suozzi had 53%, Republican challenger George Santos 47%, Libertarian candidate Howard Rabin took 1%.
From New Jersey, we head to Long Island, where there are 4 congressional districts on the island and on the ballot, and 2 of the districts have open seats. District 3, which is mainly in Nassau County, Democrat Robert Zimmerman and Republican George Santos are battling to replace Representative Tom Suozzi, who you might recall lost in the Democratic primary for governor of New York. And in a first in American political history, both of these candidates are gay.
I'm Robert Zimmerman. I'm running for Congress.
I'm George Santos, running for U.S. Congress on November 8th.
Both candidates, Republican and Democrat, hitting the diners. Republican George Santos, 34-year-old financier with a sense of humor, who knows what it's like to lose after running against Tom Suozzi for the very same seat in 2020. But now is different, he says.
Mitigating and fighting inflation to make sure that we're not hurting every American either on fixed income or trying to start a career, young families trying to start their lives, especially here in this district, which is really expensive.
One thing the candidates have in common, they are both openly gay men, making history in a congressional race.
Not every gay person needs to be a Democrat. You can also be a conservative, because I'll tell you, it was a lot easier coming out gay than a Republican in this state.
And as they brought politics here for lunch, it was easy to see nothing was off the table with voters.
Support Trump if he was the nominee?
Look, quite frankly, I supported him in 2016. I'm very honest about that. Right now, I don't know.
Republican George Santos, Democrat Robert Zimmerman battling out on Long Island to replace retiring Congressman Tom Suozzi.
I'm glad to see that now you agree that we need to bring federal dollars for our law enforcement officers.
It's been an issue I've worked on for years.
Well, the reality is the Democrats decided it was the appropriate thing to defund the police in New York City in the midst of riots that were taking place in our city, where really you can go to jail for wanting to shop at Macy's, but if you looted and burned it to the ground, that was okay, right?
Thanks you all. He won an historic race for New York's 3rd congressional district last month, and next month he's expected to be sworn into Congress. But before that happens, many are demanding a dialogue with Republican Congressman-elect George Santos. An alarming article reported by the New York Times suggests the incoming House representative may have misled the public on key aspects of his life, including his education and employment history, after no records of Santos could be found.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
Calls to the congressman-elect have gone unanswered, but his attorney said in a statement, the left is so threatened by a gay Latino immigrant and Republican, it's no surprise that Santos has enemies at the New York Times who are attempting to smear his good name with these defamatory allegations.
Santos told WABC Radio that the Times article and media reaction to it was unfair.
Down to the nitty and gritty, I'm not a fraud. I'm not a criminal who defrauded the entire country and made up this fictional character and ran for Congress.
For more information today.
In a separate interview with the New York Post, Santos did admit to lying about getting a degree from Baruch College in 2010. He told the paper he never graduated from any college. During the campaign, he claimed to have worked for Citigroup and Goldman Sachs. He now blames using, and I quote, a poor choice of words for creating the impression he worked directly for the 2 financial firms. He says another company he worked for, called Link Bridge, had a business relationship with the 2 companies.
I did extensive work on the LP side with Goldman Sachs in my time at Linkbridge. I did extensive work with Citigroup in my time and the LP position in Linkbridge Investors, just like I did work with firms on the GP side of things.
Santos also refuted the Times report that claimed he had been charged with fraud in Brazil for using a stolen checkbook. He told the radio station the report is not true.
I'm not a criminal, not here, not abroad, in any jurisdiction in the world have I ever committed any crimes.
Despite admitting to what he calls resume embellishments, Republican Congressman-elect Santos says he is not going to step down and expects to take his seat in the next Congress.
Embattled
Congressman George Santos heckled by someone at LaGuardia Airport, where he landed this afternoon, before being hammered with questions over his increasingly checkered past and claims he's been hiding out in D.C. to avoid his constituents.
And I have spoken with the voters. I've been in district the whole week. I've been taking constituent calls. I've received federal grant applications for projects in the district. And I look forward to serving the people.
Was your mother at the World Trade Center on 9/11?
Look, this isn't how you conduct an interview.
Santos refused to answer questions about whether his mother was inside the World Trade Center during 9/11, a story the congressman has repeatedly told, and one which a researcher told us isn't possible.
She was in Brazil for years before and after, so she could not have been in New York on 9/11. It's just one more lie on top of all the other lies, but this is somehow that much more significant because this is for New York, it's a seminal event.
In a week of extreme ups and downs, Santos had his Twitter account suspended and had to deny claims he stole thousands of dollars meant for a veteran's dying service dog.
Another claim Santos made in the interview that's raising eyebrows, that he survived an assassination attempt.
We have suffered life attack, assassination attempt, threatening letter, having to have security guards and police escorts standing in front of our house.
But Santos did not go into any further details or provide any corroborating evidence. In the same podcast, Santos suggested he was living comfortably, enough to make a pledge to donate his congressional salary to charity. He declined to answer questions about that vow on Tuesday.
In the podcast, you said you donate your salary. Do you still plan to do that?
The 34-year-old did say he would cooperate with a potential upcoming House ethics investigation.
Will you cooperate with that?
Absolutely. He also claimed that he was posting for all of these customers these massive, massive returns. Let's take a listen to this clip from 2020 and what he told one interviewer.
Currently at Harbor City Capital, I manage a $1.5 billion fund. Right. And I know how to manage it well. I give record returns to anybody who watches this. They'll understand I'm giving, a 12% fixed yield income return a year, which nobody in the market's giving 4, and we're giving 12. We're also giving up to 20 to 26% in IRR return on our investors' capital.
The son of Holocaust survivors, Jeff Wiesenfeld, helped pen this letter to Speaker McCarthy, urging him to oust George Santos, who he says fabricated his ties to the Holocaust for political gain.
My grandparents survived the Holocaust.
People who were systematically murdered, to adopt their martyrdom under false terms as part of your identity is disgusting.
If I were one of those in New York's 3rd District right now that the election is over, and I'm finding out all of these lies that you've told, not just one little lie or one little embellishment. These are blatant lies. My question is, do you have no shame? Do you have no shame in the people who are now, you're asking to trust you to go and be their voice for them, their families, and their kids in Washington?
Tulsi, I can say the same thing about the Democrats and the party. Look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been lying to the American people for 40 years. He's the president of the United States. Democrats resoundingly support him. Do they have no shame? I've made this very clear.
This is not about the Democratic Party, though. This is about your relationship, frankly, with the people who've entrusted you to go and fight for them. And I think one of the questions that really probably hits home to a lot of people is are you Jewish? We've got a letter that your campaign sent out earlier this year, which reads as follows. As a proud American Jew, I've been to Israel numerous times for educational, business, and leisurely trips. You said there in that letter that you are, quote, a proud American Jew. How do you explain that?
My heritage is Jewish. I've always identified as Jewish. I was raised a practicing Catholic. I think I've gone through this. Even I've not being raised a practicing Jew. I've always joked with friends and circles, even in the campaign, I'd say, guys, I'm Jewish. Remember, I was raised Catholic. So, look, I understand everybody wants to nitpick at me. I'm going to reassure this once and for all. I'm not a facade. I'm not a persona. I have an extensive career that I worked really hard to achieve, and I'm going to deliver from my experience because I remain committed in delivering results for the American people. I campaigned on inflation. I campaigned on crime. I campaigned on education. I campaigned on delivering resolve for the American people. That's what the people of the 3rd Congressional District heard me on and on as I campaigned. Now it's going to be incumbent upon me to deliver on those results, and I look forward to servicing and serving my district. I look forward to serving my people in my district to make sure that they see that this is what
looking for. The results that people are looking for are called into question when you tell blatant lies, not embellishments. And this is, I think, one of the biggest concerns, Congressman-elect, is that you don't really seem to be taking this seriously. You've apologized. You said you've made mistakes, but you've outright lied. A lie is not an embellishment on a resume. You said you worked at Goldman Sachs and Citigroup, but they've said, we've got no record of this guy working for us. You've said you've gone to and graduated from these universities, but they've said, well, we've got no record of that. These are blatant lies, and it calls into question how your constituents and the American people can believe anything that you may say when you are standing on the floor of the House of Representatives, supposedly fighting for them. That's the real issue here.
Well, look, I agree with what you're saying, and as I stated, and I continue, we can debate my resume and how I worked with firms such as Goldman and Citigroup.
Is it debatable or is it just false?
No,
is it debatable or is it just
debatable.
False?
No, it's not false at all. It's debatable. I can sit down and explain to you what you can do in private equity, in capital intro, via servicing limited partners and general partners. And we can have this discussion that's going to go way above the American people's head. But that's not what I campaigned on. I campaigned on delivering results for the American people by lowering inflation. I can sit down, and if you want to have that discussion, I'd be glad to, Tulsi, to explain that to you and make sure that we settle the score.
This is not about settling scores, and I think you just kind of highlighted, I think, my concern and the concern that people at home have. You're saying that this discussion will go way above the heads of the American people, basically insulting their intelligence. So not only are you now backtracking on these lies that you've told, but you're saying that you can't explain it in a way that your constituents would actually be able to understand.
I can explain it in a way
if you
give me the time, I can easily if you give me the time, I can easily explain it for you, as in when investors are looking for capital and I'm sitting there doing due diligence on the appetite and what they're looking for, right? And we work alongside GPs and LPs to help them place this capital. This is what I was doing, and that's when I worked extensively with these firms and many other firms at my time as I was vice president of Linkbridge Investors. So this isn't a made-up narrative, but I feel like nobody really wants to sit down and talk about it. Everybody just wants to push me and call me a liar.
There was another very tense exchange even before the State of the Union started. Senator Mitt Romney with harsh words for embattled Congressman George Santos, who made up much of his life story before he got elected. Romney telling Santos in that chamber, "You don't belong here."
Exact words I said. He shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't be look, he's a sick puppy. He shouldn't be there. They're going to go through the process and hopefully get him out. But he shouldn't be there. And if he had any shame at all, he wouldn't be there.
It's not the first time in history that I've been told to shut up and go to the back of the room, especially by people who come from a privileged background. And it's not going to be the last, and I'm never going to shut up and go to the back of the room. And I think it's reprehensible that the senator would say such a thing to me in the demeaning way he said. It wasn't very Mormon of him. That's what I can tell you.
I know you've apologized for embellishing, or lying as we like to call it on the resume, but people want to ask why. And one thing is, like, when we look at people lying this way, experts say it's a kind of way to manipulate the situation and not to be vulnerable and to not show your real selves to people. So I think a lot of people's questions would be, George Santos, without the embellishments, without the lies, would he have been elected to 100%. Public office?
I didn't run. My resume wasn't posted on my social media. It wasn't posted on my website. Look, those are insecurities, like you just said. A lot of people have those insecurities. Actually, studies point that most people lie on their resumes. It's just, unfortunately, it's the reality.
Yeah, but you lied about everything.
Well, not true, right?
You lied about your mom.
No, not true either, but I never said my mother died on 9/11. I never said that. That was never said.
all that people like to say is, oh, you killed your mother twice. That's not true. I mean, my mother was my best friend. She was when I lost my mother, it was the hardest thing for me in my life. And it's really painful when you see people trying to say, oh, you killed your mother twice. No, I didn't, right?
Of course. But you did say that she escaped out of the South Tower during 9/11.
My mother was in downtown Manhattan in the South Tower the day of 9/11, made it out. That is fact. And then all this stuff keeps coming up saying that it's not true. I have receipts to be able to prove that that's true. I mean, I was here. I was 13 years old. How would I be in New York and my mother not be in New York? And the reality is, Washington, D.C. doesn't work in the best interest of the American people. That's what I've learned.
But you got a lot of problems, Congressman Santos. I mean, now you had a campaign fundraiser who was just recently charged with impersonating a congressional aide to solicit funds for you, for your campaign.
Without the knowledge of the campaign and somebody we fired.
But apparently, they said in this indictment, there is a letter to you that Mr. Milei wrote to you in September of 2022 saying, faking my identity to a big donor, high reward in everything I do.
That was a year almost after he was fired. That was after the fact. That was him trying to, I don't know, make amends with what he did. But we had already fired him in November of 2021.
So you did not condone this at all?
Not at all.
Embattled New York Congressman George Santos is now facing criminal charges, and the lawmaker who represents areas of Queens and Long Island is expected to go before a federal judge in New York tomorrow. Prosecutors filed criminal charges against the Republican lawmaker. Again, the charges remain under seal, so the nature of the allegations is unclear.
This morning, embattled New York Republican Congressman George Santos facing more charges.
Nothing. I mean, I'm just going to go defend myself.
A 23-count superseding indictment accuses him of stealing identities, making charges with donors' credit cards without their knowledge, and lying to election officials. Santos is charged with conspiracy to commit offenses against the U.S., wire fraud, making materially false statements to the Federal Election Commission, falsifying records, aggravated identity theft, and access device fraud.
Will you step down?
I will not. I have no comment. I was in conference like everyone else without my phone, so I have nothing to talk about. I need to take a look at the whole thing.
Did you commit wire fraud, though? It's a pretty basic question.
Congressman George Santos was met by furious constituents as he and his attorney walked out of federal court on Friday morning. He blew a kiss and left without commenting. Santos, who wore a sweater and jacket, looked serious, then confident inside the courtroom. He pleaded not guilty to new charges, now a total of 23 counts.
They expel you, and then they put someone else in the seat. You're going to run in 2024.
Absolutely.
Can you win a primary given all these things that are lined up against you?
Yes.
And the general election. This is a Biden-leaning district, and you have all these issues against you.
Could I have won the general election last time? Nobody said I could, but I
It
still
was a
tried.
different situation.
No, I understand, but elections are tricky. There's no predetermined outcome.
What is the rationale for running for re-election? Why should a voter entrust you with 2 more years?
Manu,
what have you done to deserve re-election?
Manu, I am the most conservative New Yorker in the entire delegation with the most conservative record of all my colleagues. I'm the only one that if you look at my campaign website and the campaign promises as far as policies I made, I haven't broke a single promise. You look at all my other colleagues, they all break promises. They all bend and vote one way or another to benefit whatever special interest is in this state.
But they're not facing federal charges.
That's fine. But here's, at the end of the day, the people are sick and I go back home, I go into, you call it rallies, protests. I'm in the fray with them. They love it because I represent their voice here. They like the fact that I'm a scrappy guy. I come here, I do my job, and they feel like it's one of them here.
The House Ethics Panel announced today that it has found substantial evidence that embattled Republican George Santos broke the law. That panel submitted its findings on the New York congressman to the Department of Justice. It says Santos knowingly caused his campaign committee to file false reports with the Federal Elections Committee. Santos is also accused of using campaign funding for personal purposes.
After reviewing more than 170,000 pages of documents and devoting countless hours to the investigation, the committee's findings reveal that Santos sought to fraudulently exploit every aspect of his House candidacy for his own personal financial profit, and he blatantly stole from his campaign, using the money for Botox and to buy luxury items at stores including Hermes and Sephora.
After a scathing ethics report, Congressman George Santos said today he will not seek re-election, but he insists he will remain in office for now.
The House Ethics Chairman has introduced a resolution to expel embattled Congressman George Santos from Congress. That move coming just one day after the Ethics Committee released its damning report on Santos's fraudulent behavior and mistruths, including what they call substantial evidence that he used campaign funds for personal purposes.
George Santos is out. The now former Republican congressman from Long Island was expelled from the U.S. House of Representatives less than an hour ago. A special election will now take place.
History in the making. This is the first time Congress has expelled a member without a conviction. That's right, and many people thought the vote wouldn't happen, or they were unsure of whether or not it would be passed. That's because this was the third go-around, but at the 11th hour, Congresswoman Stefanik was trying to talk to other members of Congress to sway their vote, but it didn't work. This third go-around, 311 to 113. Santos was expelled. Many people wonder why this go-around they had the votes. Well, it came after the bombshell House Ethics Committee report that accused Santos of breaking federal law.
All of the work I've done in this body has been above board. Nobody can actually question my ethics and my conduct in Congress, unlike some of my colleagues who are on drunken tirades going after their former staff. But I'm the one being pinned for all of this nonsense.
Don't you have any concerns about his conduct? I mean, all the allegations, the criminal charges, he's admitted to lying about so much of his life. I mean, why should he be walking around here going to classified briefings and the like?
To say that anybody in Congress can cast stones, I mean, we're a bunch of sinners. And that's basically what we all are.
Okay, fair enough.
Every member expelled in history of this institution has been convicted of crimes or Confederate turncoats guilty of treason. Neither of those apply to me, but here we are. On what basis does this body feel that precedent must be changed for me? An American citizen, duly elected to represent the 3rd District of New York. I have been convicted of no crimes, Mr. Speaker. My loyalty to this country that gave me life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is true and unquestionable.
I myself have been a victim of George Santos and as well as other members of Congress in terms of defrauding through public donations. I had received an ethics complaint from the FEC, which I had to spend tens of thousands to defend myself. You, sir, are a crook. I know I should direct my comments to the chair. I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, hypocrisy, as I mentioned. My colleague wants to come up here, call me a crook. Same colleague who's accused of being a woman beater. Are we really going to ignore the facts that we all have passed and we all have the media coming out against us on a daily basis?
Whatever Mr. Santos did with Botox or OnlyFans is far less concerning to me than the indictment against Senator Menendez, who's holding gold bars inscribed with Arabic on them from Egypt while he is still getting classified briefings today. But he's not getting thrown out of the Senate. He's getting classified briefings under indictment for bribery. But what? Because Santos was buying Botox and OnlyFans, we got to throw him out?
You changing the locks? Yes, sir.
The reality of it is it's all theater. It's theater for the cameras, it's theater for the microphones, it's theater for the American people, at the expense of the American people, because no real work's getting done.
Officers, this is the gentleman that was accosting me when I had a 2-month-old baby in my hand. You came in my personal space. And then I immediately stepped away.
Congressman Santos, what are you doing? What are you doing to call for the end of Israeli?
What are you doing about terrorists destroying Israel? What about the terrorists from Hamas that tried to defend in this building? It's abhorrent. It is abhorrent that you are in this building stepping up for terrorists. You are a terrorist sympathizer. You are human scum. I do not care. You are human. You are human scum. That's what you are. Human scum. You have no business in this building defending terrorists.
to accost me with a child in my hand. I want him out of here.